Private school in the DC area, what you really need to know today. So, you decided that public school in DC, Maryland, and Virginia isn't all
sunshine and rainbows.
Correct, Leah. And to tell you the truth, I'm shocked. Actually, I'm not shocked. You're probably wondering if you should look into private schools, but you have no idea where to start. Well, I'm going to tell you, fall is the season when all of the research happens because applications are typically due the first or second week of January. And since it's fall,
yay, fall.
It's a great time to get started, so let's do this.
Fall's the best.
I am Melissa Terzis, DC Real Estate Mama. This is today's assistant. What is your name, small child?
Leah, and we have a guest.
The corgi is our guest. Okay. So first I want to make a disclaimer. When it comes to real estate transactions with my clients, I'm essentially the wizard behind the curtain, right? I'm stressing out, trying to make sure that everything is happening and everybody is where they're supposed to be and all of those things are occurring on their timelines. When it comes to my own life, I tend to not worry about things until it's time to actually worry about them, which is exactly how I found myself with a 5th grader last year with questionable retention skills heading toward a very problematic and somewhat declining public middle school. And like most kids today, that child, as well as others I know, this one over here, would much rather watch people live their lives on TikTok or YouTube, also you,
Never seen that one.
instead of actually living their life. Therefore, we had to make some changes. So all of this that's coming forward is based on my opinion of both DC public schools and our experience on applying for privates. So let's start with the downfall of the public school situation and basically talk about why people start to look at private school. So I've loved our elementary school, Stoddert in Glover Park, and that's no secret. It's been a great experience for our family. We haven't had a bad teacher inside that building. It's been lovely and very charming and really a nice neighborhood school for us. But Ken, your typical like overcrowded elementary school that has children there from multiple different countries who speak many, many dozens of different languages at home, and also who come to the school with many different abilities and many different home lives. Can they adequately prepare kids for middle school? Well, my answer would have probably been no, but now post-COVID, I think that with the added mental health issues and other things that are affecting so many kids, my answer is actually probably hell no, right? So I just think that there's definitely a disconnect between elementary and middle school. Unless you happen to have a kid who's really good at keeping their head above water, staying on top of everything, and advocating for themselves. If that's not your child, I will move over so that you can get into that boat with me, because that was not our child. So I never understood what teaching to the middle meant or teaching to the test until I actually started to really pay attention to what was happening in the public school. And my experience here, again, is solely with the DC public schools with my children who are in them. So let's cover teaching to the test first. When I first heard this term, I didn't really know what it meant. Teaching in the public school starts at the 3rd grade level. And essentially what they do is, I thought that it was, okay, teach to the test means they know what's going to be on this test and they incorporate it into the curriculum. That's actually not what happens. They finish a curriculum and then they say, now we're going to spend a couple weeks reviewing for the PARCC tests that are coming out that basically judge how our school's doing and how we're doing as educators. So, I just don't understand this. I would like to have the 3 weeks that they spend or the 2 weeks that they spent reviewing for PARCC. I'd rather have that either in the summer or doing something else that's like education related, maybe doing like a massive language immersion in another language. I don't know. I feel like that's this just like huge waste of time. The school says you can opt your kid out, which is great, but most parents don't really do that. And when you try to do that, the school, like, they strongly but politely attempt to discourage you from opting your child out. And the reason is because when the PARCC scores go up, teachers and the schools get bonused and they get other things. So there's a monetary incentive here for them to get as many butts into seats in the school taking these PARCC tests. All right, and so teaching to the middle is the other thing that I really had to learn all about. Back in the day when we were little, if there were kids in a class that might have been advanced or kids in a class that might have been falling a little bit behind, they took those kids and sort of differentiated them and said like, hey, these kids are going to go here and they're going to get like extra help on what they need. And these kids are going to go here and they'll get like an advanced lesson on something. And what you would see in later years that they still do now is they call it tracking, right? Some kids will be in a higher level math when they get to middle school and high school. Some will be in a on grade math. Some might be in a remedial math. I don't, whatever it is. I don't think they call anything remedial anymore. They call it like on grade level, and then maybe you're just advanced. So this kind of, I think, came on the heels of missives like No Child Left Behind, right? And other things where the schools essentially then decided that they were going to keep all the kids in the same class and kind of try to teach to the middle, right? And figure out if they can't get some of these kids to kind of rub off on the other, essentially. And I've seen this happen where it's like my kid is in a class or at a table with a kid who maybe isn't doing as well. And then they'll tell us at the teacher evaluation, like, Leah is so helpful helping Simon learn his 1, 2, 3s and his ABCs. And you're like, but why is Leah having to teach, right? Why would anybody trust her to teach anybody anyway? So teaching to the middle was probably untenable prior to COVID, but now post-COVID, we've got also behavior issues and behavior problems and mental health crises and things like that are affecting kids and their behavior in the classroom. And so I actually think that this is where everything sort of became a recipe for disaster. This actually sums up our reason for considering leaving public school. There's going to be other people for whom like the academic rigor isn't where it needs to be, that they want better academic excellence, or they want some more sports or more club options, things like that, and that they say that that's why they want that. Look, we're not Ivy League people, right? Like my husband and I both have advanced degrees. I have a master's degree. Their dad has master's and a law degree, but we have jobs that don't require anything past high school. I mean, education's great. Nobody can take it away from you. So I'm a better person for having had it. And I am happy that I did it and would never change anything. However, I'm not like that pushy soccer mom that's trying to get my kids to go to Harvard and, is all about that. So just, you kind of have to take some of this with a grain of salt. I just don't want them to be deprived of any opportunities because nobody taught them basic skills like here's how to study and here's how to learn and here's how you apply things and here's common sense and this is how this works. So now, outside of DC, why do people leave Montgomery County schools? Well, there was people who were already not happy with Montgomery County schools pre-COVID. So they had unveiled basically the Common Core stuff. Then it went to a Common Core 2.0 and it was just kind of getting off the ground. And then COVID hit in 2018, 2019. Johns Hopkins was hired to do an audit of Montgomery County schools. And then at that point, they learned that less than 1/3 of the students understood math for their grade level and less than 1/4 of students understood like English language arts for where they should be on their grade level. The curriculum was rebid and it was implemented just as COVID happened. And there are still issues. So the rumblings that you hear are that there's just too much tech. There's not enough textbooks. And it's kind of gotten away from whatever, the 3 R's, whatever that might be at this point. Why do people leave Fairfax County schools? More of the same. There's less issues with curriculum that people call into question and more issues with administration. There's a new superintendent in place, but it's a little bit too early to kind of see what kind of change that's going to bring. The anonymous mom boards kind of say that the initial out of the gate isn't so great. And that teachers are still kind of leaving because they're just not happy and they're going to surrounding districts. Special ed programs are also suffering. If you've got a kid that's in special ed, whether that is Montgomery County or public in Fairfax County, you've got to advocate hard for them. Last year, there was also a scandal in Fairfax County where the National Merit Scholars were not notified of their award until well to the end of the school year, which means that achievement didn't hit anybody's college applications and thus potentially took a chance for some of these kids to get accepted to colleges where the Merit Scholar might have made a difference and nobody knew about it. So you want to do your research. That is the next step. All right. You need to set up an account on
Ravenna.
I'm going to link that for you below. So Ravenna is the website where essentially all of the private schools, the applications are held, they put all the events and they post everything on there, and it's actually pretty self-explanatory that you can go through their process and it tells you what steps are needed and what you have to do next to complete the application. Fall is the time to do your research. So once the schools get back into the swing of the new year, you're going to see that they'll start posting things on Ravenna events, virtual open houses, then in-person open houses and tours. And that's the things that you're going to want to make sure that you know about, that you sign up for. It can become a lot, but you mark the schools that you're interested in, and then it helps keep things on your dashboard so that you can focus on those. You're probably saying, hey, look, beginning of the school year, I'm thinking about this school year. There's sports, there's new school stuff, there's new academics, there's new teachers, there's back to school. Is there anything I can do before the fall when they start all of this to get myself prepared? Yes, I have a hot tip for you. Are you ready for the hot tip? Leah, you ready for my hot tip? I'm going to tell you what it is. You need to hone your poker face skills. Leah's telling us this. You need to hone your poker face skills, because when you start getting onto these meetings and virtual tours, you're going to see that there will be the parent who asks that question. They're going to say, how, private school, are you going to challenge my genius chess playing child who is so gifted they are reading 7, 8 grade levels beyond their grade level? How will you keep them challenged, make sure that they don't get bored, and make sure that they get into Harvard or Yale? And at that point, you're going to have to either have your poker face on or not roll your eyes if you do have your camera on. Also, don't giggle, because if you're like Leah's dad and I, we were like, are these people serious? Yes. You are going to wonder if they are serious. They are absolutely serious. Good Lord, it's coming. All right, now, many people are going to ask about sports. They're going to ask about the teams. If there's a no cut policy, does everybody get a chance to play? This kind of seems to be the norm for privates, that they have no cut policies, at least the ones that we chatted with. There are also going to be lots of questions about rigor of the math program, STEM kind of stuff. You're going to, if that's important to you, this is the time to ask and find out. Many are also going to ask what kind of colleges the kids are getting into after they leave the school. It's all about the Ivy League with many of these parents. And so, all about those Ivies, no state schools. Nobody wants to hear that, right? Yeah. If it's a K through 8 or it only serves lower grades, the people, and you're probably going to also want to know, like, what kind of support level are you going to give us when we are looking at the next school? Do you have connections at these schools? How does this work? And you just want to see that they have a decent, robust program, not that they grab their foot and kick you out and say, goodbye. Good luck finding your next school. You don't want that. God, get your stinky foot out of my face. I only need it as a prop. All right, so we did not go into questions like this. We were mostly quiet. We were trying to take it all in from the school tours. And something that was very prevalent for us that we kept finding was that the person that was giving the tour, the person that was running the virtual open house kind of thing, we would always ask, you seem to really like it here, because they're very happy and, joyful. And you would say, how long have you been there? And I'm going to tell you that almost 90% of the time, the answer was, I just started last year. I've only been here 6 months, but I love it. This is not what we wanted to hear. So we kind of went for different things. I don't need to ask you about the academic rigor. I just don't, right? The school already has its name. They've already set the precedent for that. I kind of want to know other things. I just want to know, are the teachers happy? Do they stay there a long time? Because if they're happy, then the kids are going to be happy. Another thing that we wanted to know was the size of the actual grade. So a lot of people are going to ask about the size of the classes. And of course, you're going to want to know that too. I didn't waste my time with that, because like I said, I'm sort of the mindset that if you're a private, you know what you're doing and you're doing this great. I don't need to ask you if you have 6 or 60 kids in a math class. I know that you know how to do this as a private school. You have a good reputation. This is why I'm here at this info session. I'm not going to bother you with that. However, I do want to know how many kids are in the grade. And there are some schools that only had 25 seats per grade, especially the schools that were 6th through 12th grades only. They would start at 6th grade with 25 seats. And then as they got into the later years, they might expand at 9th grade and then add another 20 kids. Mm-hmm. But we were looking at the pros and cons of our child. And our older child, the pros with her is she's great in a social setting. She makes friends. She's kind of that kid that's she's not the nasty kid, but she's not the geeky kid. She's just middle of the road. She kind of makes friends with everybody. We didn't want to take that away from her, nor did we want to give her such a small social group that she was going to have one friend or maybe no friends if she didn't click with everybody. So we just didn't want to take that away from her. So for us, it wasn't all about the academics and, getting Jeeves into an Ivy League. All right, so you've got to look at everything, even schools that you may initially rule out. I almost canceled our interview at the school that we ended up loving and choosing for a couple reasons. We were thrilled to receive an admission offer from them, but I almost ruled them out because they were a little too far and they were only K through 8. And I realize now that that could have been a huge mistake because this was the most warm environment, the teachers with the longest tenure, and they absolutely loved their jobs. They loved being there. Staff had been there for like 15 to 30 years, and like we kind of knew that we found our place. Your list of requirements, like your mileage here may vary. So you can pay close attention to everything in the admissions process, and that's gonna tell you a lot. We paid close attention to their tours. If they can't strategically plan how to tour you around their building without bringing you up to the 4th floor, up the stairs, down to the 1st floor, then back up to the 4th floor, back down to the 1st floor, and then back up to the 4th floor again, they're going to have a problem mapping out a really good way to educate your child if they can't figure out how to map out a freaking tour. These were the things we paid attention to. Like, did it seem seamless? Did it seem like they liked what they do? Did it seem like they knew what they were doing? Could they answer questions for us? If the school was going to put the brand new person who just started 3 weeks ago as the tour guide because it happened to be on a Thursday night and they didn't feel like working that night, so they sent the newbie in, like that's not a good sign, right? So those were the kind of things that we pay attention to, not the on the surface kind of the other questions that people ask. So hopefully, you're going to develop your own list of requirements, and you'll just want to make sure that you got those questions at the ready. All right, so what are the DC area private schools looking for?
Bishop.
Okay.
This is the secret sauce.
This is the secret sauce. Very good, Leah. Getting accepted is more what? It's more.
Ask me.
I should ask you. It's more art than science, okay? You love art. I don't know. Do you love science? Anyway, getting accepted, I'm sorry to say, like there's no formula. Getting accepted is more art than science. Generally, we found that these schools are looking for your child and your family to fit into a profile of what they want for the classes, the grade, and the school overall. There's plenty of qualified kids, but if a class is heavy with boys, like your child's a girl, she's gonna have a better chance. Like that's just how it is. And that sort of goes across the board for any grouping that you can think of, right? If they have too much of this and they wanna skew it to more of this. If they don't want kids who sneeze or interrupt their mother, then they're gonna find kids who don't sneeze and don't interrupt their mother. Sorry, Leah, you didn't get in. Different schools are also going to prioritize different things. Some privates are going to take the child of a well-connected family. I'm sorry that is still a thing, but it's still a thing. Others are very focused on showing you diversity. So if you fit a particular group that they want to represent more of, then in you go. There are, other schools actually have the reputation for being, as they say, woke. This is kind of like a big thing around here. People are like, oh, they're so woke or whatever. And that's going to be evident on their application because there are going to be initial questions at the beginning of the application. And I knew that they were weed out questions. There was 5 questions on one of these apps. They asked if my child belonged to any of the following races, and they list the races out. They ask any of the ethnicities, if the applicant or anybody in the family identifies as LGBTQ, if they had any additional gender information that they wanted to clarify or discuss beyond what the checkbox of male or female offered. It was kind of hilarious to finish those 4 or 5 questions and know that no matter what I said after that on the next pages of the application, no matter what the teacher recommendation said, we weren't getting in because we weren't. Yeah. So, what are your chances now of getting into a private school? All right, the too long didn't read version is your chances are actually not that great. I'm sorry. Like, Marcina had a lot of friends that applied to school and ended up not getting in anywhere and going to the public middle school. Applications are at record highs right now. So where you used to only see like the wealthiest sending their kids to private school, families of all socioeconomic statuses right now are choosing private. And the schools want to help your child get in because they have diversity and equity missions and they want to make sure that they fulfill that. Private school is no longer just for the wealthy polo playing crowd like it was in my hometown. The first thing that most parents want to know is if the grade that they are applying for is an expansion year. And so this is where they add seats at the next grade level. So many of the top schools may not even have seats available in some grades. And you may think to yourself, that would actually be good information to have so that I don't waste time and money applying. And you would be right to think that. However, the applications run in the neighborhood of 75 to sometimes a little bit more per application. So if you have 75 applicants for 0 seats and you charge $100 an application, that's $7,500. Can you do that multiplication? I don't know if you can.
Wait, what? Wait, what is it? What is it? Tell me.
All right, I'll make it easy for you. The applications cost $75 and 100 kids apply. How much money does the school make from the applications? 100 times $75.
Wait. 750?
Keep going. Extra 0.
7,500.
Very good. That 7,500 could be like a whole new ivory back scratcher for one of those kids. Okay. So, pre-K and kindergarten seats are actually easier to get. And that's for the reasons that you would expect. Many people give public school a chance when the stakes are lower, and then when they see like, oh, my kid needs this, or this is kind of happening at the public school, then they start to correct and figure like, oh, hey, should we start to look at private? But there's a couple of things that are happening that you need to know. More families with 3 to 4 kids are just applying at kindergarten, pre-K just now so that they can get everybody to school at one place. And so those are taking up the seats in the earlier years that didn't used to be filled. And then they're applying for siblings. And once they've got 3 or 4 kids in the school, as long as they're happy, they're not leaving. So that's 4 seats that aren't available to kids in all of those grades. And that means there's also fewer spots in the non-expansion years as well as the expansion years. Families who are already there also have some impact, right? Like if they're surveying the school and the parents are saying there's too many kids per class, we think that 15 in the math class is too much and it should be more like 13 or 12, then they'll just up the tuition and offset that, the 2 seats that they're missing by upping the tuition. And the families that are there are typically fine and happy to pay that because they would rather have smaller classes and more hands-on instruction with their child. So that is that. Concluding everything up, the private school landscape really took until now to change to a more inclusive one. It took a huge social movement as well as a pandemic to kind of change the landscape of what the private schools were, which was schools for just the wealthy. And so whether those changes are here to stay or they're going to shift again remain unknown. I am Melissa Terzis, DC Real Estate Mama. Leah and I are checking out of this public versus private debate and how to get into private schools in DC.
Wanna